Thank you so much for being here. We are so happy to
Oh,
have you and get the opportunity to talk to you today.
my pleasure. It's probably going to be a little bit different than some of you've seen. I saw a couple of names in there that I know, but most not necessarily familiar with the core clarity piece of it.
Yeah, so as everybody on the call knows, we usually go through the strengthology slash Gallup approach. And I invited Candace today because she takes a completely different approach with strengths that I find absolutely fascinating. She is located here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You're in Plano, correct?
That is
Headquartered
correct.
in Plano. And she started her endeavor 20 plus years ago. Yes.
I
Um, yeah, so I
did.
just thought it would be amazing for you guys to hear her backstory, how she even started this whole endeavor in the first place, and then what her dream and vision has been over the last 20 years to get us to where we are today here on this call. So, Candace, thank you again for coming. She is the CEO of CoreClarity. And if you could just start us off by sharing with us what started you on this journey that you've been on for the last 20 years. How did you come across strengths in the first place and decide this is what you wanted to do?
Um, I have connectedness. Anyone with connectedness or adaptability understands what I'm going to say better than anyone else. Um, fell into a lot of what I do. It's just one of those things. There's a river, you jump in, and the current takes you where it may. I have an undergraduate degree in physics. Um, my first job was in a needlepoint store. I learned all about how to pull colors for threads and things with a degree in physics. My parents were so proud. And ended up teaching physics and chemistry at a junior college for a couple of years. And then my then husband was transferred from Amarillo, Texas to Dallas and had an opportunity to step into a whole different realm, if you will. My dad was military, retired at the ripe old age of 46 years old, and I was the last kid at home. I was the only one left when he retired, and out of five of us. And he tried certain things, didn't like several of them. Then he got a real estate license, and he talked mom into getting her real estate license. I'm the last kid at home. We moved to Amarillo. My uncle has a real estate company, and he says, "Hey, do you want a high school job? You want to earn some money?" So I worked in the real estate office. When I went off to get my degree in physics, my dad said, "Well, kiddo, there's just not much going on in the physics field, and you need a backup plan. So why don't you get your real estate license and take some real estate courses?" And I'm sitting here thinking, he's paying for it. Okay, I'll take the courses. And I ended up taking the courses, and I was a broker in real estate by the time I was 20 years old. I had my license at 18. I did rentals down at A&M. I got my graduate degree. And, it was just there. It was something I did because dad said, you need to do this. So I got it. When we moved to Dallas, and after 2.5 years of teaching, I thought, okay, let me try this real estate thing. Got into residential, not really a fan. And a lot of things happened. Ended up getting rid of the first husband, which was a wonderful thing. Met somebody else, got married, and which was a wonderful thing. And he said, "You don't have to work." And I thought that was a wonderful thing. And I got bored. I mean, okay, look at the talents I have learned. I got really bored. And he said, "You know what? You don't have to work. Go ahead and just get a job. I mean, go ahead and just, answer ads or something and go interview with people just to learn about stuff." So I had this wonderful period of 40 days and 40 nights, I'll tell you, of just being able to answer any ad I wanted to answer in the newspaper and just go talk to people. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to be a stockbroker. Wow, don't want to do this. I found all these things I didn't want to do. And then I interviewed for a position. Now, remember, my dad was military. I lived all over the world growing up. So we moved on average every 2 years of my life up till the time I was 18 years old. And I interviewed for a position at an at a relocation company, didn't know they existed. I mean, in the military, the government takes care of everything. It wasn't a real relocation firm. And I came home from that going, I can do this. I have my broker's license. I know about real estate and I want to do this. And my husband's like, you don't have to get a job. And I'm like, but I want to do this. I have everything I need to do this, and so I took the job. Last, I think, 3 years in that industry before I got bored and moved on to something else. But I kept moving up from basically from commercial, residential real estate to the relocation industry. I worked at a mortgage firm for a while, handling REOs and real estate owned properties back in the 1980s when everybody was losing their houses because everything was going bust. Learned a lot. Then I moved into commercial real estate, which was again a step up. But here's the thing. I hate real estate. I absolutely loathe looking at houses. Unless we are planning on moving, I do not want to look at a house. No, I don't want to look at that open house. No, I don't want to. No, I hate it. I hate looking at furniture too. I mean, come on. I was a little kid being drug around the world looking at furniture and houses every 2 years. This is not something that was good for me. So basically, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just kept falling into these positions. And I ended up getting into the commercial side. Then there was an opportunity to create an organization at one of these commercial companies of brokers around the US and Canada to come together. And I created this community as part of my job. I came in and I said, I see that you guys want to do this. And, I think I'd be perfect at doing this. And I stepped into that role. And I'd read the book. Many of us have read it probably. Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, about, visualizing what is it that you want. And my strategic still didn't know that end point that I really wanted. I just knew I wanted to be happy. I mean, I wanted to have fun and I wanted to be happy. Is that too much to ask for? And I, did this meandering thing through falling into a lot of different jobs. Creating the organization, the commercial real estate organization around the US and Canada, ended up creating a company. We were, as a conglomerate, we were making about $350 million a year when I walked out on that. 2003, I'd gone back to school to get my MBA just down the road at SMU. And I thought, okay, I have no marketable skills. I don't want to go into real estate again. Oh my gosh, do not make me stay in real estate. Maybe an MBA will give me the ticket that I need to get into a new career. That's what I thought. It doesn't work that way. It really doesn't work that way. But what did happen is during the course, we had a leadership class. And one of the things we had to do in our leadership class was interview leaders around the DFW area and come up with a paper on what we saw as leadership. And during this time, I had a classmate who was very analytical and he was an achiever and he created lists. And one of the things he did was, oh, well, this leader mentioned this book, because the last question we asked on every single interview was, if you were to share with us your best place that you can learn about leadership, what book or what program or what would you recommend? And he took all of the books that they recommended and he put them on a list. And we had a list of 78 books that he rank ordered based on, how many times was the book mentioned? Who mentioned it? Did we like that leader that mentioned it? How high was our esteem of that leader or not so much? And so he had this whole algorithm that he put together and came out with this list. And as a learner, the worst day of the program was graduation day because it was over. You hate stopping learning. So what was I going to do? And I'm looking at this list and I said, okay, I'm going to take this list and I'm going to start on book 1 and I'm going to go through and I'm going to read all 78 books and then I'll figure out what to do after that. This is my learner plan. And on the way home from graduation, I made my husband stop at Barnes and Noble. And I said, I'll be 5 minutes. And he's like, I got the parents in the back seat. I hope it will be, 5 minutes or less. So I ran in with the first page and I handed them the page behind the desk. And I said, get me the first book you can get on this. I need to be in and out of here in less than 5 minutes. The first book you can get your hands on. And they looked at it. And in the top 5 was Now Discover Your Strengths by Marcus Buckingham and Don Clifton. And they said, oh, easy. Grabbed it, had my credit card out already. And I was out of there in less than 5 minutes. So I get home and the next couple of weeks, I read the first part, I take the assessment, and I am absolutely captivated by this assessment. In fact, I call my parents. I said, hey guys, listen to this. And I'm reading off the descriptions of the talents. And I get to the last one and I finish and there's a pause. And my mom says, well, yeah, you've been like that since you were 3 years old. What's the news here? I said, well, it was news to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the whole thing about these talents. They're so normalized for each one of us because it's just the way we are normally. To be able to separate them out and talk about them in this way was something that I hadn't seen. And if you guys have ever been through any MBA program, they assess you to death. I mean, we had FIRO B, we had the Big Five, we had Myers-Briggs, we had Berkman, we had all of these different assessments that were run with us. And the problem for me was I'd get my results and I'd read them and go, sort of. I don't know why everybody's getting so excited about them. Sort of. Do I agree with the fact that they think I should be a Catholic priest? No, not so much. I mean, all these things that just didn't match me because in the assessment world, if you can capture 95% of the population with the assessment, it's good enough, get it out there. We're looking for the unfortunately named normal curve. I'm in one of the tails of the normal curve for assessment. So none of them ever hit me until this one. And I was so captivated, I said, I got to get to the bottom of it. I talked to people about it. I asked people who'd read the book, I'd get their talents, I'd capture them. I had a database going right off. This was June of 2003. And I still had my job with the real estate organization and I was still doing my work with them. But boy, on the side, I was doing something else. I was absolutely captivated by this information. And I couldn't get it out of my head. So I created a program, went in and did some work for some of the real estate firms that were in the organization. And they said, oh, this is great. And some friends said, hey, can you do this? And all of a sudden now I have, 300 people in the database. Then it gets up, higher and higher. And somebody said, can you come do this for my organization? We're starting this new association and chapter and we need this. And I'm like, sure. When do you want me? And they told me the date and I'm like, oh man, I don't know. Let me get back to you. I need to check on that date. So I go to my husband and I say, okay, here's the deal. I've got this group, this thing I'm doing on the side, they want me to come and they want me to do it, but it's my birthday. Should I do it or not? And he's like, you're asking me whether you should go do the thing you love more than anything else on the world on your birthday or not? You're asking me? Why? And I'm like, oh, gosh, when you put it that way, well, of course I'll do it, right? And he goes, yeah, well, yeah. I don't have to be with you on your birthday. You go do the thing you love more than anything else. So I called them up and I said, yep, I can do it. And so I get this, okay, great. How much is it going to cost us? Cost you? What are you talking about? Well, how much do you charge to do this service? And I'm like, charge you? What are you talking about? And they said, well, don't you charge for this? And I'm like, no. And they go, well, we have a budget. And I'm like, really? You paid for this? You pay to have me come in and do exactly what I love doing more than anything else in the world. And they're like, well, yeah. I said, how much is the budget? And they said $750. And I said, well, then I guess I charge $750. And I went and did it for them. And I had to create a name of a company. I had to get a checking account. I mean, all of these things happened from May 15th to June 25th in
She's just telling her
2004.
story. You could really hear that.
Just a second, guys. Can everybody mute who's not speaking? Please? Let me see if I can mute everybody.
And strengths clarity coach uses the same.
That was
So
kind
I'll
of
unmute.
insightful, though. What was that?
Yeah, interesting. But so, I mean, I now have a company and people want to hire me to come in and do this work. And I never in my wildest dreams believed that that could be possible, which, you hear a lot, right? People want to pay me for what I do and it's fun. I mean, it was everything that I ever wanted. So didn't want to create a company, but I did. Didn't want to have employees, but I do. Didn't want to, do a lot of things, but to service this, absolutely. So basically what I ended up doing is I created a model. This was again, 2003 was when I took it. 2004 is when I created the company. I have a business coach. Everybody should have their own coach. Steve Strauss, for those of you in the coaching community here, if you know Steve, he's an amazing business coach. And Steve took the assessment and he came back and he said, you got to get this on the internet. You've got to get this so every single coach in the world can get to this and get these charts that you sent me immediately. And I'm like, okay. And I said, well, and I also need to approach Gallup because I'm using their material. And he goes, yep, here's my recommendation of an attorney. And I hired the attorney. I found a guy at IBM who, after everybody else said, no, you cannot create these charts based on your model because there are over 33 million potential sets of results. I need to know what results we'll get so we can know which files to return. And I'm like, you're going to know it when they put it in the system. And that's it. And there's more than 33 million. And most of the people said, the IT people back then said, can't be done. I found a fellow at IBM who said, I think I can do this. You're creating these by hand, by chart. I think I can automate this. So we took a program and created a small program so that I could create the charts easily. Before I was just cutting and pasting and putting them together. And when you guys start to see the charts, you'll understand where it's going in. So basically, all of this came around to a point where I was able to quit my job that I'd had for 11 years. And then they didn't allow me to quit. They said, we will let you retire as the executive director emeritus of this, and we'll pay you $5,000 for every meeting you come to. Mm-hmm. A meeting? And they're like, yeah, we'll pay all your expenses and give you $5,000 to come to our meetings.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay. Oh, yes. And they kept me on their insurance for 5 years.
Amazing.
On top of that, which was important.
Mm-hmm.
So had all those things taken care of. And we approached Gallup in 2005 and showed them what we were doing. And they said, we're not using that anymore. And we went a different direction. We need you to create a consent form, have people sign this consent form when you go in and do your programs, and then we'll be fine. And I'm like, okay, done. And we started doing the work. And now I'll get you into the background to give you guys a little more information about what it is we're doing. So we've got hopefully, we got our title slide up there and you can see it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, first thing, guys, legal disclaimer. CoreClarity is not a part of the Gallup organization. We are an independent organization. Gallup owns the Strengths Finder / Clifton Strengths Assessment, the 34 themes. We love them. I think this is probably the greatest gift to mankind in the last 700 years. I mean, Gutenberg press, pretty big for an input learner, right? Books are a big thing, but I really think this is probably one of the greatest gifts to humanity that's been out there. But going back, non-Gallup information has not been approved by Gallup, not sanctioned by Gallup. So you're going to see things from a CoreClarity point of view, which is very different than what you've probably seen before. And if you guys remember, Gallup, the definition of a strength is consistent, near perfect performance in an activity. What I realized up front is in the job that I had for this organization that I was working for, the real estate firm, is I was consistently and I had near perfect performance in doing the financials for the organization. I was the executive director. I had to send them every month 17 pages of very detailed analytical information that almost, it just killed me. I hated the financial side of it. Still do. I'm just not good at that. Yes, I have an MBA. Do I love the accounting part? No. In fact, we could go so far as to say I have a hate relationship with accounting and financials and all that stuff. It's just not my cup of tea because it was so just forced in me. So I said, you know what? A strength, yes, consistent, near perfect performance. It's in an activity, but it has to be in an activity you love doing. I had perfected a weakness of mine. I had taken something that I was told I had to be great in, and I was doing it because I had to do it, and I hated it, and it was draining my energy every day. In the middle of getting my MBA, I had a foot of my colon removed because I capture my stress in my gut and it would tie up in knots. When you get sick consistently because you're doing work that drains your energy, you have to change something. And so I'd say I really didn't have a choice in this matter. I had to go in and do something different. So this is 2003. The only thing that was out was the book. That's pretty much the only way you could take the assessment is to buy the book, Now Discover Your Strengths. And what I found, I started reading everything Gallup. I tried to find everything I could find out about this organization and the work that they were doing. There wasn't much out at that time. So I was sitting on the advisory council for the IMBA program down at SMU's Cox School of Business. And our faculty advisor was a guy by the name of Dr. John Slocum. And Slokey, some of us call him, John, first name basis. John, he was the OB professor and he was amazing. He was incredibly articulate communication. He jumped into things. He was an activator. He was strategic. He always began with the end in mind. And he had woo and relator too. So he had a big circle of people that he brought into his circle. But you know what? If you broke one of his rules, he kind of cast you out. Well, I was in his circle, but not necessarily in the closest circle that he had. But I went to John and I said, John, oh my goodness, you need to take one of the assessments. I don't care which one. Take one of the assessments you're using in the OB program for the IMBA program and take it out and put in the Strengths Finder assessment. He's like, oh yeah, Gallup, they came in here. They didn't go about it academically and he trashed it. And I'm like, it was like, he slapped me, right? What do you mean? It's not and I'm just kind of breathing through it. And I said, John, do you have the book? And he goes, yeah, they gave me a book when they were here. And I said, did you take the assessment? He goes, no. I'm like, okay, now I understand. Take the assessment. Do me a favor, take it. Let me show you what I see in it. And so he did. And the next week when I had a meeting set, now understand, I am working a full-time job here. I have a job that has everything, including a consistent paycheck and insurance. And I have a meeting set with John for an hour at the campus, and I'm sitting in there waiting for him. And he walks in and he throws his results at me. They come skittering across the table. And he goes, yeah, that's me, but I can't teach this. I'm like, the brain is thinking, wait a minute, you're an OB demigod in the, in organizational behavior world. You teach at Kyoto University, you sit on 5 peer review boards. what came out of my mouth was, what do you mean you can't teach this? He said, there are more than 33 million sets of results on this assessment. You show me how I can teach this and I'll take you seriously. He turned tail and he left. And I'm like, okay. I have 57 minutes before I'm expected at work. And I started looking at it and I said, what did John teach me to do? What did he teach me to do in his class? And he taught us how to create basically systems. He taught us how to create a framework. He taught us how to create visuals to get a point across. And so I started reading everything. I started dividing the talents into 4 categories when I ran across a book called Follow This Path by the Gallup organization, where they that's the first time they took the talents and divided them into 4 categories. And I looked at those categories and I'm like, yeah, it's not quite the way I was thinking, but it's Gallup. So I adopted their categories. But when I started looking at the categories, I realized that each one of the categories had something in common with 2 of the other categories. And so I put together a quadrant system. And basically anything that is above the horizontal line is external. These are talents that have to do with other people. Anything below the horizontal line is internal, and these have to do with other people. On the right side, both of these categories have something to do with motivation. How do I motivate others or mobilize others to action? Or how do I motivate myself? How do I get energized? On the left-hand side, it was a lot harder. This was the one where it was like, okay, what's the connection here? And I realized these are interactive talents. These are talents, internal interaction. How do I reflect on things? How do I gather information? How do I process information? How do I make decisions by the based on the information I've gathered and the mental images I've created in my head? And an external interaction, how do I connect with other people? And it's not just that connection, it's how do I develop, how do I create, how do I maintain and sustain these relationships with other people over time? And the time piece is really critical. And when the CoreClarity key came together, that's what we call this, is the CoreClarity key. It's the key to unlock, what do these talents mean to me and to me personally? And from a standpoint of the talents, they are not equally divided in these categories. The reflect talents, there are 12 of the 34 that fit in the green reflect category. It is hard not to get a green talent. 12% of the people don't get one in that category. On the energize, there are only 9 in that category. There are 7 blue connect talents, and there are 6 of the magenta mobilized talents. Now understand, this is 2004 when I created this CoreClarity key and I put these colors to it. So I've been doing this quite a long time. A client walked in and put the client's profile up on the screen, and he did not have any of the green reflect talents. At that time, Gallup was calling that category the thinking talents. Try telling the CEO of a company he doesn't have any thinking talents. I couldn't do it as a facilitator. I kind of just glossed over it, but one of the people that had 4 in that category sitting in the back of the room. And when I put it up there and I showed it and I showed his profile and all, and I said, so did you see something? Because this was a group that I was using as guinea pigs. I would go in and do lunch and learns for them about every 2 or 3 months. And I said, so did you see something this time that you didn't see before in the information I brought you? And the 4 green guys sitting in the back, and he goes, no, you didn't tell us anything we didn't already know. And I'm like, my heart just goes, right down there. Need to get a bigger size shoe because my heart is on the ground. And then he followed it up with, Mark never stops to think about anything before he does it. And I realized I can't use the category names that they have. I have to change the category names. And so that's how I came up with the reflect, the energize, the connect, and the mobilize talents. Because initially Gallup called them thinking, striving, relating, and influencing. Those were the category names. Now, those of you that are here know that Gallup also came in 2008, 2009 with the strengths domains. They used it, they came up with them through the strengths-based leadership book. So what we have found is that the domains are more about how other people see you, not necessarily how you might experience your talent yourself. So why would people follow you based on what they see about you? And the biggest one that moves for me is responsibility. Responsibility in our world is all about how you connect with other people. You make a promise to somebody, you follow through. You make a second promise, you follow through again. Make a third promise, you follow through once again. Until that other person wakes up and goes, oh, wow, I love this about Julie. She does exactly what she says she's going to do. I can count on her. And it creates that strong connection, that blue talent. I call it the blue glue that keeps people together over time. In Gallup, it's an executing talent. Well, from the outside, looking at a person with responsibility, do they get a lot done? Yeah, they do, because they've made promises to people and they follow through with their promises. But if you make it into an executing talent for the person, then how is it different than achiever? It's not really. So the responsibility side, now here's the thing, responsibility people with no talents in the energized column are going to complain about all of those tasks that they're doing. They are going to go, oh, I can't believe I promised I'd do that. And everybody else, that doesn't have responsibility is kind of going, well, you don't really have to. And they're going, yes, I do. I mean, responsibility, follow through on the tasks and the promises they make to other people before they follow through on the ones they make to themselves, which is more of the achiever. Achiever, it's on the list, I'm going to do it. I don't care who it's for, it's on the list, it's going to get done. So that flipping of categories, you can see how other people would see responsibility as being an executing talent. But that person experiences it in their own way as, I made this promise to this person, therefore I will follow through on this promise. So there are 12 that change categories. So I'm going to kind of blow your minds a little bit when we look at these with those 12 talents. So if anybody has a question on theirs, let me know. Connect, reflect, energize, mobilize. That's the basis of all of the CoreClarity keys. There's also something else I came up with early. We found this out from working with children in a school district. I've also realized there are what we call the three major fault lines. These are faulty ways of thinking that if we continue thinking this as adults, they get us into trouble. And the first is we think everyone else thinks the same way we do. Well, of course they do. I mean, why wouldn't they? Isn't everybody normal like I am? Yeah, that's the normal piece too. But everyone doesn't think the same way we do. I mean, usually that holds true until something happens in your life to show you otherwise, or you get married. There's a lot of us people that are exactly opposite the way we think. The second one's kind of a corollary to that one, but we think that, we think everyone else has the same talents we do, plus what we see in them that we don't have. Now, as Gallup coaches, or those of you that are in the coaching realm or done a lot with the Gallup stuff, we know that's not true, but without this information, we think it's a level playing field and they got something we didn't get. Because it's so normal for us, we don't separate our talents out. So this one gets us into trouble all the time. But the one that's the most insidious of the three is we think when somebody says something about us, they're actually talking, when somebody says something, we think they're talking about us. When in actuality, a lot of times what they have to say has more to say about who they are than who we are. So somebody with Achievers 34 is lost. They've got this big project. They don't know how to get started, and they may say something to a friend who has Achiever, and the Achiever says, well, that's easy. All you need is a list. Well, if they struggle at putting lists together, they're going to think, oh, she thinks I'm stupid. good, doesn't she? You know, I mean, think about all the things that go on in our heads. We think it's about us when in fact it's, oh, all you have to do is create a list because achievers create lists and they're easy. And then you just follow the list. You work the list. So we have these three major fault lines that we work with too. So all of the talents together have information about them that we use in our program. But the big thing that I did early on, even before I did the CoreClarity key, is I put them in pyramids. And I put them in pyramids because your top talent is your number one talent. Now, it may be really close to your second and third talents or your second talent. We don't know how close they are. Gallup doesn't give us that information, nor should they, because of the way the assessment was put together. The construct wouldn't hold well if they gave us those numbers. But for some of us, our top talent is head and shoulders above our other talents. And think about it as flowing down and affecting everything else underneath it. So the achiever affects the learner, the achiever affects the relator, the consistency, and the discipline for Brandy, but her discipline may or may not affect her achiever. If they're real, if it's a steep pyramid and that achiever is number one, you think about it from a standpoint of a pyramid like this, or if they're almost the same, think about it as a shallow pyramid where the talents are more interchangeable. So it's sometimes, it could be at times discipline rises to the top and the list goes by the wayside because the calendar becomes more important than the list. But the list is still going to get worked, isn't it, Brandy?
Yeah, if I have to sacrifice anything, it's going to be discipline, relator, learner, consistency. But I ain't sacrificing that achiever.
Exactly. So when you look at it from the standpoint of her talents, you can see that her, if we look at the CoreClarity key, she has 2 greens, 2 oranges, and 1 blue talent. When we look at people's what we call core drilling to the core of the top 5 talents, because those 5 talents really determine a lot on how a person shows up in the world. What we see is she has talents in the 3 most prevalent categories. 30% of the population come in with talents in some order in those 3 categories. We call them lifelines. These are the caregivers and the caretakers. These are the people that go in and take care of the people because they connect with other people, they reflect on what needs to be done, and then they just go out and do it. And for the lifelines in the world, they're not looking for the great pats on the back, and they're not looking at the cheerleaders going, oh, I'm so inspired by that person jumping up and down and wait. No, they're not. They're just, they are those wonderful people who make sure that the world goes around on its axis every day. And I don't think it would if we didn't have them. Every team, every organization, every family needs a caretaker and a lifeline. So these core drills now are something that we developed to help people understand how their 5 talents come together to create the unique person who they are. I mean, it changed the game for us. It changed the game for a lot of our clients. It also helped me understand not only was there a reason I didn't understand those assessments, but I am truly in the tails of the normal curve. 2.3% of the population come in with a core drill that has only green and magenta. And we are those opposite sides, so we're not hitting any of the adjacencies. And I jump between 2 different worlds, as do the people who have a core drill similar to mine. And it's, with me, I think. And then when I'm ready, I take off. I call it a thought rocket. I do a lot of thinking before I take off and do something. But once I make the decision that I'm going to hit the ignition, there's no going back. I am looking for, that escape velocity so I can get away from the things that are holding me down, so I can get in orbit and things are easy and fun and, oh my gosh, they'll pay me to do this kind of things. That's where the thought rocket comes in. And for those of you that have been in the Dallas area for a while, there used to be 2 radio stations, KVIL and K-Love, where a gentleman by the name of Ron Chapman was the DJ for many, many, many moons. But he had a woman by the name of Susie Humphreys. Susie had 3 magentas and 2 greens. So she takes off and she's already out there and she'll say, oh, this, and then she'll figure out how she's going to do it afterwards. So she was more rocket than thought. And when you start to listen, if you think back to some of those conversations they had, she was the one who was out there talking to people and making promises and then figuring out, okay, how are we going to make this promise come true? Because that's the way she's hardwired. So we're all hardwired in these different ways. And those core drills take on a life of their own when we look at them. There are 15 different core drills. Talked about the lifelines and 30% of the database. Anytime we go through, we created a facilitation program for groups, intact work teams typically. So we'll go in with the group and we'll say, okay, the database is 30%. Your group is, whatever it is, that's what we share with them. I don't have all of y'all's talents. If we get them, Brandy, and we get permission to send them, I'll be happy to put some charts together and show them how it looks. There are people that don't have orange talents. Now, the magenta, don't have magenta talents, don't worry about it. You can get to it. In fact, if you look at the core drill itself, think about a pinwheel that you blow. When it's blowing, you don't see any holes, do you, on a pinwheel? The same thing with our talents. If we are using our talents, imagine it overcoming inertia and start spinning. You don't notice that people that are lifelines don't have talents that don't naturally mobilize other people. Because when you're using your talents, it's like all these other things come to you. It's where you get stopped up is if I say, you know what, I've got this box of widgets and I need them sold. By the end of the day, I want to put you out at the airport where people are getting off. Oh yeah, there's, right at 4 ounces of liquid in it on the widgets. But, I just need you to go sell them all for $10 each and they'll get rid of this box. The lifelines are going. I have had people with 3 magentas go, I'll take it, I'll do it, because they love mobilizing people to action. But you guys are like, you're our caregivers, you're our caretakers. You're not going to sell us something that's going to get us in trouble with TSIA in 5 minutes. No, what the mobilizers did was they bought a ticket and went in and said, I'll buy drinks for everybody on the other side. And they were selling them for $20 each. I mean, they found a way to do it because they love moving people to action. So with the magenta, not having the magenta talents, 51% of the population do not get a talent in that category. It's the least prevalent of all of them and has some of the least percentages of people that have any of them. I call it rent a magenta. Find a magenta and rent one if you need one. Do not try to be that person because you will never be that person. Same thing with what we call passionatos. With the orange, I call it OJC. Those of us without orange talents are orange juice challenged. We do not have an internal thing that gets us up and out of bed every morning, unless we're getting up to do something we love to do. That's the using the talents. They have to be connecting with other people, reflecting on what needs to be done, and going out and mobilizing other people to do it. Give them a list of things to do and they are going to sleep late. I promise you. If you have children, understand this. It's not that they're lazy, but if they have achiever, make sure you give them a list, because if they don't check it off the list, they're not going to be happy. You have forces of nature. They are, in our terminology, also clueless, blueless. I'm clueless, blueless also. I don't have any blue talents. It's not that I don't care about people. It's not that I don't care. I care very deeply. It's almost as if there is a well down deep inside of me and there's this garden hose coming out of it. And the garden hose has a kink in it. So what happens is the feelings, they come up, but they get caught in that garden hose. But then one small thing happens, the kink gets blown, and all of a sudden it is a tsunami of emotions just right there and then. Sometimes we can't help where that happens. And I tell people without the blue talents, find where your who's your anchor, or where is your anchor, or what is your anchor, and try to hold it together until you get to that, so that you can have that tsunami of emotions in a safe place. Because if it happens in a business meeting, it's embarrassing, and it can be job ending. It can be career ending. And I've seen it happen in meetings with executives before. And to be able to even help them understand this in the moment is priceless. So the clueless, blueless, again, it's not that we don't care, we care very deeply. It's just, it's kind of locked in. And the only other talent that I can bring you that doesn't have a category is optimizers. Optimizers are about 8% of the population. They don't have any of the reflect talents in their top 5. It doesn't mean they don't think. They think differently than the rest of us. But I call this lean on green. Lean on green for 2 reasons, because they're lean on the green talents in their top 5, but also lean on the green talents and optimize whatever it is they're bringing to the place. Don Clifton, the father of strength psychology, who started all of this, was an optimizer with individualization and maximizer. Oh my gosh, he was an amazing person. And as one optimizer in a meeting, it was an association meeting, and I was showcasing his team. He had 2 people with all 5 green talents. And he came in when they saw his, and they laughed, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, look, he doesn't have any green. Oh my gosh." And he walks in confident as can be. He said, "Guys, green are a dime a dozen. I can buy green. It's hard to find me though." And he was right. He optimized the teams, and he worked for a major top 50, one of the top 50 Fortune 50 companies in the US. Huge.
So Candace,
So when you understand it, so that's what I did.
yeah,
Sorry,
so
Brandy.
no, I want to we only have about 10 minutes left, and I have 4 questions myself, and I'm sure other people have questions. So
Okay,
let's
get off of it.
let's see if we can do a quick question. Is there any significance to the ants and the colors?
Actually, there is. On the ants, they are going to be wearing the colors that they have, and they will have a tool that has the other color on it.
And
there's also
why ants? Out of every animal in the animal kingdom, why ants?
Well, they're not just ants. Those are our towel ants. Yeah, Louise. Hi, Eloise. Good to see you. So, the whole thing about ants, Vince Pacente wrote a book called The Ant and the Elephant. If you're not familiar with it, it's a wonderful little business parable where an ant gets washed away from his colony, and he wakes up and he's on this dry, cracked surface, and he's walking around and trying to find his colony again. And an owl flies down and says, "Well, here's the problem. You're not in the desert as you thought you were. You're actually now living on the back of an elephant." And the ant's like, "Oh my gosh, now that he's told this, he sees it, but he couldn't see it before." And the elephant has left the oasis where his colony is. So he said, "You can't talk to the elephant. He's too big. You have to visualize the oasis and send the pictures in your mind of where you want to go to the elephant. So the elephant will turn around and start going." Because if you're an ant living on the back of an elephant and you want to go north and the elephant's headed south, you're going to end the day further from your destination than you started. So he teaches him how to visualize to, send the messages to the elephant to get to where he wants to go. And the elephant starts to turn. And the whole parable is based on the fact that in our brains, we have 120 billion synaptic connections, however many you want to call give or take a few billion. But at any 1 second of time, about 4 million are firing in your conscious brain, the things that you're aware of. At that same time, over what is it, over 20 billion are firing in your unconscious brain. The elephant is your unconscious brain. The ant is your conscious brain. So what we try to do in our programs is we bring this from the unconscious, these talents, up to the surface, so people can look at them and go, ah, that's why I do what I do.
Gotcha.
Got it. And then they can put it back down and, move forward and beyond. So the elephant controls this.
Yeah. So you just said
to be aware
that this is what you do in your programs. Can you help all the people on the call understand what are your programs? How do we access your programs? Who can, how does the CoreClarity thing work? Do you teach trainers? Do you teach facilitators? Do you take it in to organizations yourself? Can you help us understand that piece a little bit?
Well, we have all of that. Dave Pappenmeyer, though, is a wonderful person who could probably describe it even better than I could. Dave, are you willing to come on?
Sure, absolutely. So CoreClarity does have two. They're rolling out a third program that we work with individual teams, intact teams typically, that kind of help the individuals see how their strengths work, as well as helping the team see how everybody's work together. So that's it's a fantastic set of workshops that CoreClarity has for that.
And you are a
Yeah, and so
certified CoreClarity coach, correct, Dave?
Correct. Yes.
Got it.
yeah.
Yes.
So we train people to do this. We train coaches and facilitators to take our program into organizations, and we also have a lot of organizations who get their internal trainers trained to take this into the organization at large. And a lot of coaches use it also in their coaching practices to help people understand where they are. So there are a lot of charts that are created. I mean, we just need first name, last name, email address, and 5 talents, and all the charts are provided that are needed for the programs. And we have a pretty extensive training program, Dave, don't we?
Yes, very intensive.
We call it an intensive. Yes, you don't do anything else that week, please. But we've been doing it for now 18 years, going on our 19th year now.
And is there anything new and exciting that you guys are working on at CoreClarity at this time?
Oh gosh, there's so many different things. But one Dave sort of alluded to, we have a new leadership program that we're rolling out next month. But one of the things that is from a conceptual side that really is new and different for me is a concept that I've been thinking about for forever and ever. It's been around probably 15 years now, and it's all about chi. Now, chi is the energy that people have. In Eastern philosophies, chi is all about the energy that one has. I use it as an acronym. Clarity is core. People need to understand themselves at their core and how these talents and work. Then for the H, they need to have their honesty with themselves. Yeah, I do have these talents, and sometimes they hold me back, and sometimes they help me go forward. And really being aware of the personal limits and the weaknesses in your blind spot is critical, because they are there. It's not just all sunshine and roses, right? But then the I is the intentionality. How are you going to design your life so that you use the greatest gift that you've ever been given on a daily basis? That's a challenge. And you can't do that if you're not honest with yourself. And you definitely can't do it if you don't know what's going on in the core of who you are. Mm-hmm. So the chi piece of it is coming out with our leadership program. But this really is the basis, I think, that all of us get to in coaching people and helping them figure out who they are, where they're going, and what they need to be doing. in their lives.
Well, that is so exciting. I'm going to open it up.
Love it.
Anybody on the call have some questions for Candace? I saw Brad. Did you have a question or two, sir? You're on
You
mute.
know me, Brandy, I always have questions.
Jay,
but-
what's your question? Ask away.
So what is one of the biggest highlights that after doing all this training, what's the big aha moment that you get with almost everyone, regardless of their personality, regardless of where they fall in the strength finders? What's the biggest takeaway aha moment that you're seeing with almost everyone?
It's that understanding that this has always been with them. They never had words that they could use to describe them, and to be accurate and really, I had one woman, I went through her talents with her, and she said at the end, I went through a pyramid chart, and I just remember sitting there with her, and she said, "So you're telling me this is what's good about me?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "So these are supposed to be the things that that help me." And I'm like, "Yeah." And she said, "And all my life I thought this is what was wrong with me." Who put that message in her head? I mean, that happens a lot of times for people. In the schools, my opening story for any speech that I give is about Del Norte Middle School in Colorado, where the kids, sixth graders, were taking the assessment. There was one little kid sitting there. His name was Noah, and he was smaller than the other kids. And the thing you noticed about Noah is he had these glasses on that were the thickness of Coke bottles, and they were held onto his head by a band that ran around his head, because without them, he was legally blind. He was one of the resource kids. My day and age, we didn't call them resource kids. There was another term that we used for these kids. But Noah was taking the assessment, and the kids' assessment, the young kids, is not timed. And the teacher, who was their third grade teacher and is going to be their sixth grade math teacher, is kind of walking around monitoring. And she's noticed that Noah's been there for a while. I mean, he hasn't moved. He hasn't gone anywhere. And kids are leaving and coming back, and leaving and coming back. And finally, she says, "No, is there something I can do to help you?" And he goes, "No, I'm fine." And she notices he's on the last screen. I mean, and it says, when you finish this one, you're going to find out what your 3 emerging talents are out of this field of 10. And he just can't hit the mouse button. And he finally does, and he closes his eyes, and one eye opens and the other eye opens, and he pushes his chair back and he jumps up and he screams, Mrs. B, come quick. It's not blank. I have talents." He thought it was going to be blank. I mean, how many people are walking around hurting like this? So you see a lot of things come out. And I mean, his real name's Nicholas. So if I messed the name up in there, it's because I tried to change his name for the stage stuff, but I hadn't thought about him in a while. And that's why I do what I do, because there are people like that. And I was like that. I didn't know what I needed to do. I didn't know where I needed to go. I didn't realize that I got bored with stuff because I'm a learner. Go figure. Better be exciting, better be new, better be different. So I think every single person on the face of this earth ought to have an opportunity to take the assessment. And I think they ought to have an opportunity to get their CoreClarity chart so they really understand who they are there for. Because this, as one of the kids in that class said, who ended up being the valedictorian of the class 6 years later, if everyone had this information, there would be no more Columbines. And mouths of babes, right? So
Thank you, Candace.
that's why I do what I do. Yeah.
Serving a greater purpose. And we really appreciate you being here today and sharing with us all of the, research and the energy and the thought that has gone into your wonderful program. We just can't thank you enough. And if any of you Uh-huh.
If anyone wants to get their charts, email me or Dave. Dave's got it too. You guys probably know Dave well, but I'll put my information in here and I will let you guys know how you can get in touch with me. Be
Yep.
happy to send you your charts.
Feel free to reach out
But
to
it
me
is different.
and I'll connect you with Candace.
Yeah. Yeah. But like I said, everyone should know this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Candace. And thank you everyone for being here today. I really appreciate it.